Hi, welcome back to Joe Blogs. In today's episode, I want to talk to you about what's happening in Canada.
I intend to resign as party leader, as Prime Minister. After the party selects its next leader, this country deserves a real choice in the next election, and it has become clear to me that if I'm having to fight internal battles, I cannot be the best option in that election.
So Justin Trudeau, who's been the Prime Minister of Canada since November 2015, over 9 years, has now resigned. And that means that he's become the sixth leader of the top 10 countries in the world that have changed their leader over the past few months. This table shows the top 10 countries in the world by GDP in 2024. Now, you don't need me to tell you that the United States has a new president who will be taking office on the 20th of January. Obviously, that's Donald Trump. The situation in Germany, the third largest country in the world, is that the economy is currently in recession and the parliament has been dissolved and there is a new election taking place in 24. In the fourth largest economy, Japan, the previous Prime Minister resigned in September following a series of scandals. In the United Kingdom, which is the sixth largest economy, the Labour Party replaced the Conservatives after more than a decade in power in July 24. In the seventh largest economy, France, there is political chaos. And in 2024, the country actually had 4 different prime ministers. And as we've just seen in Canada, the 10th largest economy in the world, Justin Trudeau has now resigned and there will be a new election at some point during 2025. And the problem that you have when there's a change of leadership and potentially a change of government is that it causes policies to change, it causes uncertainty, and potentially has knock-on implications to other countries. So a good example of that is Donald Trump taking over as the US president. He's already said that he's going to apply tariffs against countries such as Canada and Mexico. He said that he's going to apply an additional 25% against both of those countries as a result of the fentanyl problem in the USA, which he identifies as being a problem with regards to the fentanyl being allowed to cross the border from Mexico and Canada into the USA, and so he's applying these tariffs. Now, as a direct result of Donald Trump's announcement, there was division within the government in Canada, which resulted in the finance minister resigning from the government in December. And this has been cited as one of the reasons why Justin Trudeau has now resigned from his position as Prime Minister. So what's going on in Canada and what does this mean for the Canadian economy and the global economy? Well, unusually, the change of government isn't down to what's going on in the economy, because Canada is actually doing quite well at the moment. This chart shows the annual growth rate in GDP in Canada over the past 3 years. And what this shows is that over the past 3 years, Canada has consistently achieved positive growth in GDP. And in 2024, things have actually been improving. In the first quarter of 24, the 12-month GDP growth rate was 0.8%. However, that increased to 1.1% in the second quarter, and the most recent figures for the third quarter of 24 show that the year-on-year movement is an increase of 1.5%. This chart shows the official rate of inflation in Canada over the past 12 months, and what this shows is that over the last year there has been a reduction in inflation. In December 23, it was sitting at 3.4%. However, by August 24, it was down to the Bank of Canada's target level of 2%, and it's remained at or around that level over the past 3 months. And the most recent figure for November is 1.9%. And if we look at what's been happening to food inflation, which is often a major cause for concern in an economy, in December 23, food prices were rising year on year by 5%. However, over the last 12 months, there has been a reduction in food price increases. And the most recent figures for November show that year on year, food prices increased by 2.8%. And this chart shows what's been happening with interest rates in Canada over the past 3 years. And this shows that 3 years ago, interest rates were at 0.25%. Interest rates then increased rapidly to combat rising inflation, and this was similar to what happened in most other developed economies. And interest rates rose to a peak of 5% in August 2023. However, over the past 7 months, there have been 5 interest rate reductions, and the current level is 3.25%. So what is going on in Canada, and why has Justin Trudeau decided that he needs to resign? Well, I think this is a situation whereby the people of Canada have got Trudeau fatigue. He's been in power for 9 years, and over that 9-year period, he's presided over the COVID-19 pandemic, which caused obviously huge problems for a lot of people. There were a lot of people who died, clearly, and also inflation rose to really high levels, particularly food inflation, and a lot of people struggled with that. And Justin Trudeau appeared on TV every single day throughout the peak of the pandemic. And I think a lot of people associated him with the problems that occurred during that time. And of course, since the COVID-19 pandemic, the world was thrown into chaos because firstly, we saw rising prices as a result of the fact that there was huge increase in demand. When everybody was released from all of the lockdowns, we saw a spike in demand, which pushed up prices. So we had a real push in terms of inflation at that point, and that was then fueled further by Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which pushed up commodity prices. And I think what's happened over that period is that people become tired of what's going on and the excuses that are given for what's going on globally. And in 2021, Justin Trudeau held a snap election to try to gain more power. However, it backfired and he actually ended up with a minority government. So he needed votes from other parties, and over the past year or so, those votes have reduced. And the consensus view at the moment is that when the new election is held, his party, the Liberals, are likely to lose considerably. So it's very likely that they're going to be out of government, and I don't think he wants to be on the train as it crashes into the station. So he's decided that now is the time to go. But as I said right at the start of this video, the problem that we have is that consistent changes of government and prime minister mean changes of policy, changes of decisions, and potentially political turmoil. So what's the summary and conclusion today? Well, I wanted to post this video to make sure that everybody was aware that there is going to be a change of government and also a change of Prime Minister in Canada in the very near future. And if you're sitting in Canada or the USA watching this, you're probably thinking, why are you telling me this? I'm watching it on mainstream media news. But that mainstream media news doesn't translate all across the world. Just because it's happening in North America doesn't mean that people in Europe and Asia and everywhere else in the world is fully on top of what's happening. So I wanted to share this video to make sure, firstly, you knew about what was going on, and then secondly, to talk about what's happening in Canada, because I think the obvious assumption when there's a change of Prime Minister or a change of government is that, firstly, either there's a major scandal, which is quite often the case when you have a Prime Minister resigning and deciding that he can't carry on, or that there are major economic problems and that the people of that nation have got sick and tired of what's going on and that they want a change of plan. But what we've seen in Canada from the data is that actually isn't the situation. The economy is in pretty good shape. It's doing quite well in terms of inflation. Interest rates are coming down. They're coming down to a more manageable level. And overall, GDP is doing quite well when you compare it to what's been happening for a lot of other countries. So from an economic point of view, things are going to plan. But unfortunately, people get sick and tired of politicians. And when you have a minority position in a government, it becomes very difficult to actually get your policies through because anything that's slightly controversial tends to get blocked. You struggle to get people to vote for it. And so you can't really make any major decisions. And what you really need when you're running a country is to have a big majority so that anything that you get put forward will get approved and then you can make some changes. And also, as I mentioned earlier in today's video, the political changes that are being seen around the world. So Donald Trump is the biggest one. Obviously, he's coming in and he's made a lot of statements that he's going to make significant changes. And the tariffs that he's threatened against Canada could really be a major problem from Canada's point of view, because if he does apply a 25% tariff on all Canadian imports, that's going to cause problems for all of those businesses that are exporting directly to the USA. Now, Canada needs to do something to counter that, but you need a strong Prime Minister to step up and say to Donald Trump, we're not going to take this, we're going to take some other action against all of the US imports, because the Canadian market is really important to a lot of US businesses, so Canada does have a position of power here. However, the problem started because there were divisions between Trudeau and Friedland, and they couldn't agree what the best way forward was. Trudeau tried to demote her. He actually tried to take her out of the government positions. She decided that she wasn't going to stand around for that and wait for that to happen, and so she resigned. And that really started to unpick Trudeau's popularity, and I think was the start of his downfall. So what we're seeing here is that the changes of government that are happening all around the world at the moment, particularly for the biggest nations, the countries with the largest GDP, are having knock-on implications to other countries. And there is a real risk here that we could see a global recession starting to happen as a result of decisions that are being made in certain countries, having knock-on implications, repercussions, potentially counter tariffs from places like Canada and Mexico and the UK and Europe against the USA. And so there's a real balancing act to find here for the new leaders of all of these different nations. And I think it'd be a really interesting year in 2025 to see how things bed down, whether or not we see stability after these new leaders all come into power, or if everybody wants to flex their muscles, show how important and powerful they are by doing certain things. And if that happens, we could see a downward spiral in terms of global trade. And if that happens, then that threatens the global economy. So hopefully you found today's video useful, informative and thought-provoking. If you've liked what I've said, then please give me a thumbs up. Thank you for watching this video all the way through to the end. And here's something to put a smile on your face.